Before we dive into penetration testing, I think it's super important to talk about the OWASP top 10 and to provide this checklist with OWASP that we're going to be using. And first of all, let's just talk about OWASP. So OWASP stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. This is the web app reference 101. I have no better way to put it. This is the go-to place when it comes to web application penetration testing. It's OWASP, and you're going to hear this all over the place, especially when it comes to web application penetration testing, and you're going to hear interview questions and all kinds of stuff related to this. So what I want you to do is I just want you to go out to Google and go to the OWASP website, explore around, see what's interesting here. The one thing I do want to point out is there is the top 10. And this is great right here. We can open this in a new tab. They also have this cheat sheet series that they're starting. So you can go into here and say you're looking for specific cheat sheets. You can look for cheat sheets on say cross-site scripting, which we haven't gotten into any of this, but it'll tell you, hey, here's all the different ways that you can test for cross-site scripting. Here's different payloads. Here's how to attack. And it's really nice. And they give you all different kinds of ways to attack. And we're going to be covering the top 10 in this course, which here's the top 10. The top 10 being the what they consider the top 10 most popular weaknesses in a web application, and what any company or organization should be aware of. So these change from year to year. Right now they are in the 2017 version of it, and you can just click on this here and kind of get an idea of what some of the top 10 are. Now, there are at least over 100 different ways to exploit a website, probably way above that, okay? And there's all different kinds of vulnerabilities that you can check for. The top 10 are considered the most critical. Now, these are what your potential employer, are probably going to interview you on, these 10 topics. And it's important to know what they are. You don't have to know specifically 1 through 10, have it memorized. It doesn't hurt. Sometimes in an interview, I've been asked, okay, what is the number one on the OWASP top 10? And you should know it's injection. But I couldn't tell you that security misconfiguration was number 6, for example. But you might have some of those trivia questions, but more than likely what they're going to ask you is, what is an XML external entity? How would you go about exploiting that? Okay, you've exploited it. Now, how would you go about defending that? How could you instruct a client to defend against this? And in my experience, being able to talk to developers is one of the hardest things, especially if you're not a developer. Previously, I was not a developer. I don't come from a development background. So when you're doing a web app assessment, you have to imagine the situation that you're in. You are attacking a website or web application that has been developed by people, and then you have to go face to face with those people and tell them what's wrong with their website or what's wrong with their web application. And they can become defensive, and it's very easy to, you're beating up their baby. It's their pride and joy and nobody wants to be, told that they've left flaws in an application or anything. So sometimes it can get combative, not to scare anybody away, but just to prepare you for those sorts of situations. So having a good understanding of what you are exploiting and why it's vulnerable, and also how to fix it, is super important, because that way you can just relay that to the dev. And the better that you are at talking about it, the more respect you're going to get in a room, and the less likely that there's going to be combativeness, because you're going to be able to hold your own against people that are developers. So with that being all of the way, we're going to be covering these top 10 here. And if you want, you can scroll through this and just read through the different top 10. It has them here and how it's changed between 2013, 2017, and come right through. And it gives you a high-level overview of all the different types of flaws. And you can come right to injection here. And it talks about the different types of injection, how to prevent it, is it vulnerable? And then it gives you all different kinds of references. Here's all the different types of cheat sheets that are available to you, and just the CWEs as well, which are just another thing to look at. Port Swigger is another thing to look at as well. There's all different kinds of things here. Example scenarios, So this is very, very well laid out, and it's just fantastic resource for anybody looking to get into web application testing. Web apps are overwhelming, but the more you read up, the more you study, the more you just keep into the times, the better off you're going to be. So with that all being said, let's go out to Google one more time or two more times here. And what I want you to download is this OWASP checklist. So go and just Google OWASP checklist GitHub. And this Tan Prathan here, this first one that comes up, you can just click on this and you should be looking for an Excel sheet. And let me bring that up on my end. So this Excel sheet, I have witnessed firsthand save an assessment. And I'll explain that here in a second. But here you have a checklist. And if you scroll through it, there are 124 different things to test for. And this is what they consider, you need to test for when you're testing a web application. And what's nice is it says, hey, what are you doing? Well, we always start with information gathering. So we're going to conduct search engine discovery, right? Going way back to what we were doing with information gathering in the beginning of the series. That makes sense. And it says, hey, Google hacking, you can use tools like SiteDigger, Shodan, etc. And then you have a checklist here. You could say, yeah, I did this, it has no issues, or it has issues, or not applicable, and it tells you a description. That's great. Part 2 of this, that's actually fantastic too, is if you come over and you go to Google one more time and you say OWASP checklist PDF, the first thing that comes up is this OWASP testing guide. And I'll provide links to both of these in the description or the references section. But if you click on this and you see here OWASP testing guide 4.0, now you can scroll through this and it might take just a little bit. I'm going to try to cheat a little bit and scroll down. And what happens is eventually you're going to run into the same checklist area. So you're going to run into info-001. I believe it starts at 3, chapter 3 here. So it covers the framework, or actually chapter 4, I apologize. And you come through here and you have OTG001. And this is on page 30. So OTG001, if we go back to our Excel, you can see OTG001, okay? And what's nice about the PDF is it says, hey, here's what you're looking for, here's the test objectives, here's how you test it, and it gives you all different tools, examples, etc., what you can be looking for in here. And then it goes into 002 and goes right through it. When I first started out pen testing against web apps, and still to this day, I use it a little bit less, but I still use it. I use this PDF like, I went literally line by line on this. I used the PDF and I tested for every single thing in here, so I left no stone unturned. And that's kind of the story time I want to get into real quick on why having a checklist is important, and then we'll wrap up the video. So this checklist, one time I was sitting with a very much senior web app tester, a brilliant guy. I would trust him to test a web app. And what had happened is we had been testing this website this whole time, and we weren't really finding anything, but we weren't using a checklist. We were just kind of going off methodology from his head and, just testing the application as he saw it. And he was like, the last thing I do in an assessment is I go back and I go through the checklist and I check the boxes and I say, yes, I did this. No, I didn't. And well, we were scrolling through the list, and then there came up something about, checking on the account creation parameters or sign-in parameters. And there was something, I'm just going to use this to type in here. There was something when you were creating an account that said admin equals false. So what if you were to intercept your request and change it to admin equals true? Well, guess what? It made the account an admin when you registered. Now, had he not checked the checklist, he would have just let this mentally lapse. It didn't mean that he didn't know how to test for this or what he was looking for. It just means that the testing here is overwhelming. Again, there's 120 something of these to look for. You're bound to forget about one or two. It's just human nature. Most people are not going to be capable of memorizing this. So please utilize a checklist in your testing. It's so useful. You have all these resources available to you, and you should take advantage of them fully. So that's my spiel on this. Again, I give this to a client every time. I have my notes in here, and I'll make the notation. That way, when we go back, we can reference anything or any questions they might have when it comes down to what I looked at and what I saw and what I didn't see. So from here, we're going to go ahead and do some installs to get our setup ready. And we're going to start talking about Burp Suite more in depth after that and start working through the OWASP Top 10. So let's go ahead and move on to the next video.